My sister Victoria drained our mother's entire life savings account to pay for her dream wedding, leaving our disabled mother with nothing for her medical bills. I was devastated until my 8-year-old daughter Sophie quietly said, "Mommy, I know what Aunt Vicky did with Grandma's money." 3 days later, Victoria was calling me in tears after discovering that her perfect wedding had been systematically dismantled by a child who understood justice better than any adult in our family. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows of our modest 2-bedroom apartment as I prepared breakfast for Sophie, my 8-year-old daughter who possessed the kind of quiet intelligence that adults often overlooked until it surprised them. Sophie sat at our small dining table, methodically organizing her school supplies with the precision of someone far beyond her years, creating neat rows of colored pencils and carefully checking that each homework assignment was properly completed and filed. At 31, I had learned to appreciate the peaceful morning routine that Sophie and I had established over the past 3 years since my divorce from her father. Our life together was predictable in the best possible way, built around Sophie's school schedule, my work as a medical billing coordinator at Riverside General Hospital, and our regular visits to my mother's assisted living facility across town. The stability felt precious after the chaos of my marriage's dissolution and the subsequent financial struggles that had forced us into our current modest circumstances. Sophie possessed an unusual gift for noticing details that escaped adult attention, a trait that her teachers praised during parent conferences, but that sometimes made social interactions with other children challenging. She preferred observing to participating, often sitting quietly in corner spaces where she could watch family gatherings or school activities, with the intensity of a young anthropologist studying human behavior patterns. Her quiet nature had developed during the difficult period surrounding the divorce, when adult conversations carried undertones of conflict and financial stress that Sophie absorbed despite our efforts to shield her from grown-up concerns. My mother, Eleanor Martinez, had raised Victoria and me as a single parent, after our father abandoned the family when I was 12 and Victoria was 15. The experience had shaped both of our perspectives on family loyalty and financial security, though apparently in dramatically different ways. Mother had worked double shifts as a hospital technician for 25 years, carefully saving every possible dollar to ensure that Victoria and I could attend college and build stable adult lives without the financial instability that had characterized our childhood. 3 years ago, Mother had been diagnosed with early-onset Parkinson's disease, a devastating blow that forced her retirement and relocation to Sunset Manor, an assisted living facility that provided the medical support she required, while maintaining some degree of independence. The transition had been emotionally difficult for all of us, but Mother had approached it with characteristic determination, frequently reminding Victoria and me that she had prepared financially for exactly this type of challenge, through decades of careful saving and conservative investment strategies. Victoria, now 34 and working as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized advertising firm, had recently become engaged to Marcus Williams, a successful real estate attorney whose family possessed the kind of generational wealth that had always impressed my sister. Their engagement had been accompanied by increasingly elaborate wedding plans that seemed to grow more expensive with each conversation, as Victoria embraced the opportunity to finally experience the luxury lifestyle that she had always believed she deserved. The wedding planning process had revealed aspects of Victoria's personality that concerned me, particularly her growing obsession with matching the lavish celebrations she followed on social media, and her resentment toward anyone who suggested scaling back her vision to match her actual financial resources. Victoria had always possessed expensive tastes that exceeded her income, but the engagement had amplified these tendencies to levels that seemed disconnected from practical financial reality. Sophie and I visited Mother every Tuesday evening and Saturday afternoon, maintaining a routine that provided both emotional connection and practical support for Mother's ongoing medical needs. These visits had become increasingly important as Mother's condition progressed, and I treasured the opportunity for Sophie to develop a meaningful relationship with her grandmother, despite the challenges posed by the disease's gradual advancement. During our most recent Saturday visit, Mother had seemed unusually tired and stressed, mentioning financial concerns that surprised me given her historically careful management of retirement resources. She had worked with the same financial advisor for 15 years, maintaining conservative investment strategies that prioritize security over growth, and had frequently discussed her relief at having sufficient resources to cover her medical expenses without burdening Victoria or me with additional financial responsibilities. Mother's financial anxiety during that visit had included specific concerns about upcoming medical expenses that her insurance would not fully cover, particularly specialized physical therapy that could help maintain her mobility and independence for a longer period. The therapy represented a significant monthly expense that Mother worried might exceed her available resources, though she had been reluctant to share specific details about her financial situation when I offered to help research additional insurance options or assistance programs. Sophie had listened quietly to our conversation about Mother's medical concerns, occasionally asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated her understanding of the situation's seriousness. Her questions revealed sophisticated comprehension of the connection between financial resources and medical care quality, understanding that surprised me given her age, but reflected the reality that children often absorb more information about family challenges than adults realize. The following Tuesday evening brought unexpected urgency to our routine visit, when Mother called to request that we come immediately rather than waiting for our scheduled time. Her voice carried an unfamiliar strain that immediately triggered my protective instincts, and I arranged for Sophie and me to leave work and school early to respond to Mother's obvious distress. We arrived at Sunset Manor to find Mother sitting in her small living room, surrounded by financial documents and bank statements that she had spread across her coffee table with the systematic organization of someone attempting to solve a complex puzzle. Her hands trembled slightly as she gestured toward the papers, a symptom that typically worsened when she experienced stress or emotional upheaval. Mother's explanation of her financial crisis emerged slowly, interrupted by frequent pauses as she struggled to articulate the scope of what had occurred. Her primary savings account, which had contained nearly $80,000 in carefully accumulated retirement funds, had been systematically emptied over the past 6 weeks, through a series of large withdrawals that she had not authorized and did not understand. The bank statements revealed a pattern of escalating withdrawals that began with smaller amounts but quickly progressed to transfers of $10,000 and $15,000 at a time. Mother's attempts to contact her bank had resulted in confusing explanations about authorized signatories and power of attorney documents that she did not remember signing, leaving her feeling helpless and confused about how to protect her remaining assets. Sophie sat quietly beside me on Mother's small sofa, listening intently to the conversation while occasionally studying the financial documents with the same careful attention she applied to her homework assignments. Her presence provided emotional comfort for Mother, who had always appreciated Sophie's calm demeanor and thoughtful questions, but I wondered whether exposing an 8-year-old to such serious adult financial crisis was appropriate or potentially harmful. Mother's distress was compounded by her awareness that the stolen funds represented not just money but security, independence, and dignity that she had worked decades to establish. The theft threatened her ability to remain at Sunset Manor, pay for essential medical care, and maintain the modest lifestyle that allowed her to face her progressive illness with some measure of control and self-respect. As Mother continued explaining the scope of her financial losses, I felt a growing sense of dread about the implications for her immediate and long-term care needs. My own financial resources were severely limited by the costs of single parenthood and the ongoing economic impact of my divorce, leaving me unable to provide meaningful financial assistance even if I liquidated every asset Sophie and I possessed. The conversation was interrupted by Mother's phone ringing, and I answered to find Victoria on the line, calling with excitement about final wedding preparations that would take place over the next few days. Victoria's enthusiastic description of luxury vendors, exotic flowers, and premium catering services created a surreal contrast with Mother's financial devastation, and I struggled to maintain appropriate responses while processing the timing of these parallel situations. Victoria's wedding expenses had apparently escalated far beyond her original budget, requiring creative financing solutions that she described in vague terms that suggested she had found unexpected resources to fund her dream celebration. Her casual mention of having secured additional funding through family connections made my stomach clench with growing suspicion about the source of her newfound financial capacity. After ending the call with Victoria, I returned to Mother's financial documents with renewed focus, studying the withdrawal dates and amounts, with the systematic attention that my medical billing work had taught me to apply to complex financial records. The pattern that emerged suggested sophisticated planning rather than opportunistic theft, with withdrawals timed to avoid immediate detection and structured to minimize bank scrutiny of unusual account activity. Sophie's quiet voice interrupted my analysis with a simple observation that changed everything. "Mommy, the dates on Grandma's bank papers are the same dates that Aunt Vicky posted pictures of her wedding shopping trips on Instagram." Her matter-of-fact delivery of this information revealed that she had been quietly connecting pieces of information that none of the adults had considered examining together. The weight of Sophie's observation settled over me like a physical blow as I realized that my 8-year-old daughter had identified the connection that explained Mother's financial crisis. Victoria had systematically stolen our mother's life savings to fund her elaborate wedding, betraying the woman who had sacrificed everything to provide opportunities that Victoria was now using to destroy the very person who had made her success possible. Mother's shocked silence confirmed that she had reached the same devastating conclusion, and I watched as decades of trust and family loyalty crumbled in the space of a few seconds. The woman who had worked double shifts to ensure her daughter's security had been systematically robbed by the daughter she had trusted with legal authority over her financial affairs. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sophie's continued observation of the adults' emotional responses demonstrated her understanding that she had revealed something significant, though the full implications of Victoria's betrayal were beyond any child's ability to fully comprehend. Her calm acceptance of the situation's seriousness provided stability that neither Mother nor I could offer in that moment of shocking revelation. As evening approached and we prepared to leave Sunset Manor, I realized that Sophie's innocent observation had transformed our family crisis from mysterious financial loss to deliberate betrayal that demanded both justice and protection for Mother's remaining assets. The path ahead would test every value I had learned about family loyalty, personal courage, and the responsibility to protect vulnerable people from those who would exploit their trust. The drive home passed in relative silence as Sophie returned to her homework while I processed the implications of what we had discovered. My sister had stolen our mother's life savings to fund a wedding celebration, leaving a disabled woman without resources for medical care or basic security. The betrayal felt incomprehensible, but Sophie's clear-eyed observation had provided the key to understanding what had happened, and potentially recovering what could still be saved. Tomorrow would bring the beginning of a confrontation that would fundamentally alter our family relationships and test whether an 8-year-old's sense of justice could prevail against an adult's carefully planned theft. Sophie had shown me the truth, and now it was my responsibility to act on that knowledge in ways that would protect Mother and hold Victoria accountable for her devastating betrayal of family trust. The sleepless night that followed Sophie's revelation brought waves of anger, disbelief, and determination that cycled through my consciousness like emotional tides. I found myself alternating between reviewing Mother's financial documents and researching legal options for financial elder abuse, while Sophie slept peacefully in the next room, apparently unburdened by the gravity of what she had uncovered. Her innocent observation had exposed a betrayal so profound that it challenged everything I believed about family loyalty and moral boundaries. Morning arrived with the harsh clarity that often accompanies life-altering discoveries. As I prepared Sophie's breakfast and organized her school materials, I struggled to maintain our normal routine while processing the implications of Victoria's systematic theft. The cognitive dissonance between preparing my daughter's lunch and planning confrontation strategies for financial fraud created a surreal atmosphere that underscored how completely Victoria's actions had disrupted our family's foundation. Sophie's calm demeanor during breakfast reflected her remarkable ability to compartmentalize serious situations while maintaining focus on immediate responsibilities. She completed her morning routine with characteristic efficiency, occasionally glancing at me with expressions that suggested she understood the significance of yesterday's discovery, but trusted that the adults would handle the necessary responses appropriately. The drive to Sophie's school provided an opportunity for conversation about the previous evening's revelations, though I struggled to find age-appropriate language for discussing financial betrayal within family relationships. Sophie's questions demonstrated sophisticated understanding of the ethical dimensions involved, particularly her concern for mother's welfare and her confusion about why Victoria would steal from someone who had always been generous and supportive. Sophie's perspective on the situation revealed the moral clarity that children often possess before adult complications obscure fundamental principles of right and wrong. Her assessment of Victoria's actions was straightforward and uncompromising, in ways that reminded me of the ethical standards I had been taught as a child but had perhaps compromised through years of adult relationship management and conflict avoidance. After dropping Sophie at school, I drove directly to Sunset Manor to discuss the situation with Mother and develop a strategy for protecting her remaining assets while confronting Victoria about the theft. The morning light streaming through Mother's apartment windows seemed to emphasize the vulnerability of her position, surrounded by the modest possessions that represented a lifetime of careful accumulation now threatened by her own daughter's betrayal. Mother's emotional state reflected the devastating impact of discovering that someone she trusted completely had systematically stolen her financial security. Her trembling hands as she handled the bank statements revealed not just the physical symptoms of her progressive illness, but the emotional trauma of realizing that her preparations for dignified aging had been deliberately sabotaged by the person she had empowered to protect her interests. Our conversation about confronting Victoria required careful consideration of multiple factors that extended beyond simple moral outrage. Mother's legal vulnerability as someone with a progressive neurological condition meant that Victoria could potentially claim that Mother had authorized the withdrawals but forgotten, due to her medical situation. The power of attorney documents that Victoria possessed provided legal cover for her actions, unless we could prove that she had exceeded her authority or acted against Mother's explicitly stated wishes. Mother's reluctance to involve law enforcement reflected both her emotional attachment to Victoria and her fear that public exposure of the theft would result in additional humiliation and family destruction. The generational perspective that had shaped Mother's approach to family conflict emphasized private resolution and forgiveness over public accountability, creating tension between her natural inclinations and the practical necessity of protecting her remaining resources. My research into elder financial abuse had revealed the systematic challenges faced by victims attempting to recover stolen assets from family members. The legal presumption that family members act in good faith, combined with the complex documentation requirements for proving financial exploitation, created significant obstacles for successful prosecution and asset recovery. Victoria's position as the holder of power of attorney documents further complicated potential legal remedies. The scope of Victoria's theft became clearer as Mother and I reviewed her complete financial records from the past 6 months. The systematic nature of the withdrawals suggested careful planning rather than impulsive decision-making, with Victoria timing her thefts to coincide with Mother's medical appointments and periods when she was less likely to monitor her accounts closely. The calculated approach revealed a level of premeditation that transformed the theft from family conflict to criminal enterprise. Mother's medical expenses over the coming months would require immediate access to funds that Victoria had stolen, creating urgent pressure to recover assets or secure alternative financial resources. The specialized physical therapy that could help maintain Mother's mobility and independence carried monthly costs that exceeded her Social Security income, while her medication expenses continued escalating as her condition progressed and required more sophisticated pharmaceutical interventions. The emotional impact on Mother extended beyond financial concerns to encompass feelings of personal betrayal that threatened her psychological well-being during an already challenging period of medical decline. Her relationship with Victoria had been central to her emotional support system, and discovering that this relationship had been systematically exploited for financial gain created grief that compounded the practical challenges of asset recovery. My own financial limitations meant that I could not replace the stolen funds through personal resources, despite my desperate desire to restore Mother's security and dignity. The reality of working as a single parent while managing student loan payments and basic living expenses left no margin for absorbing the impact of Victoria's theft, creating additional pressure to pursue recovery through legal channels rather than family assistance. The afternoon brought a phone call from Victoria that tested my ability to maintain normal family interactions while concealing my knowledge of her theft. Her continued enthusiasm about wedding preparations, delivered with apparent obliviousness to mother's financial crisis, created cognitive dissonance that made conversation nearly impossible to sustain. Victoria's casual references to unexpected financial windfalls that had enabled her dream wedding took on sinister meaning given what Sophie and I had discovered. Victoria's invitation for Sophie and me to attend final wedding preparations over the weekend presented an opportunity to gather additional evidence of her spending patterns while maintaining the appearance of normal family relationships. The strategic value of observing Victoria's wedding expenses firsthand could provide crucial documentation for potential legal proceedings, though the emotional cost of participating in celebrations funded by mother's stolen money felt almost unbearable. The decision to attend Victoria's wedding events while secretly documenting evidence of her theft required compartmentalization skills that challenged my emotional and ethical comfort zones. The necessity of maintaining normal family interactions while gathering information for potential criminal prosecution created psychological tension that reminded me of the complexity that children like Sophie navigate when adult relationships become unpredictable and potentially dangerous. My research into financial fraud investigation revealed the importance of comprehensive documentation that could withstand legal scrutiny and support criminal charges if necessary. The systematic approach required for building an effective case demanded attention to detail and strategic thinking that went far beyond my normal professional responsibilities, creating additional stress during an already overwhelming period of family crisis and emotional upheaval. The evening conversation with Sophie about attending Victoria's wedding events required careful explanation of the strategic purposes behind maintaining normal family appearances, while gathering evidence of wrongdoing. Sophie's understanding of the situation's complexity reflected her remarkable emotional intelligence and her ability to grasp adult concepts that many children her age would find incomprehensible. Sophie's willingness to participate in evidence-gathering activities demonstrated her commitment to protecting mother and seeking justice for Victoria's theft. Her natural observational skills and tendency towards systematic analysis would prove valuable for documenting Victoria's wedding expenses and connecting them to the timeline of mother's financial losses, though I remain concerned about exposing her to additional adult deception and conflict. The strategic planning required for effective evidence gathering while maintaining family relationships demanded skills that neither my professional background nor personal experience had prepared me to develop. The necessity of learning investigative techniques, legal procedures, and conflict management strategies while caring for both mother and Sophie created overwhelming pressure that tested my emotional resilience and practical capabilities. Mother's decision to authorize my involvement in recovering her stolen assets required formal documentation that would protect both of us from potential retaliation by Victoria. The legal complexity of elder abuse cases demanded careful attention to procedural requirements that could affect the admissibility of evidence and the success of prosecution efforts, adding additional layers of complexity to an already challenging situation. The weekend's wedding events would provide the first opportunity to observe Victoria's spending patterns firsthand and potentially gather evidence that could support criminal charges or civil asset recovery proceedings. The psychological preparation required for maintaining normal family interactions while secretly documenting evidence of theft demanded emotional strength that I was uncertain I possessed. Sophie's role as an unwitting catalyst for exposing Victoria's theft had evolved into conscious participation in evidence-gathering activities that would determine whether justice could be achieved for mother's financial losses. Her remarkable maturity and ethical clarity provided inspiration for my own commitment to pursuing accountability regardless of the personal costs involved. The realization that Victoria had systematically planned and executed the theft of mother's life savings while maintaining the appearance of loving family relationships revealed a level of deception that challenged my fundamental understanding of family bonds and moral boundaries. The betrayal extended beyond financial theft to encompass emotional manipulation that had exploited mother's trust and vulnerability for personal gain. As the evening progressed and I finalized preparations for the weekend's evidence-gathering activities, I reflected on the transformation that Sophie's innocent observation had triggered in our family dynamics. What had begun as routine concern for mother's welfare had evolved into a comprehensive investigation of financial elder abuse that would test every relationship and principle that had previously defined our family identity. The path ahead required courage, strategic thinking, and sustained commitment to justice that would challenge my abilities and potentially expose Sophie and me to retaliation from someone who had already demonstrated willingness to steal from vulnerable family members. However, the alternative of allowing Victoria's theft to succeed while Mother faced financial insecurity during her illness was unacceptable. Sophie's quiet confidence in the justice system and her belief that truth would ultimately prevail provided emotional strength for the difficult decisions that lay ahead. Her 8-year-old perspective on right and wrong, uncomplicated by adult rationalizations and relationship management concerns, served as a moral compass for navigating the complex challenges of exposing family financial abuse while protecting the innocent victims of Victoria's betrayal. Tomorrow would bring the beginning of active evidence gathering that could determine whether Mother's stolen assets could be recovered and whether Victoria would face appropriate consequences for her systematic theft of family resources. The weekend's wedding events would test our ability to maintain strategic focus while participating in celebrations funded by Mother's stolen money, but Sophie's remarkable observation had provided the foundation for seeking justice that Mother deserved. Saturday morning arrived with the peculiar tension that accompanies deliberate deception undertaken for righteous purposes. Sophie and I prepared for Victoria's brunch celebration with careful attention to appearance and demeanor, understanding that our success in gathering evidence would depend entirely on maintaining the illusion of enthusiastic family support for her upcoming wedding. The psychological preparation required for this performance felt like preparing for theater, except the stakes involved recovering stolen assets and protecting a vulnerable elderly woman from further financial exploitation. Sophie's understanding of our investigative mission demonstrated remarkable sophistication, as she helped select clothing and accessories that would allow discreet documentation of Victoria's wedding expenses. Her suggestion that we bring her small digital camera under the pretense of capturing family memories revealed strategic thinking that impressed me, while simultaneously raising concerns about exposing an 8-year-old to such complex adult deception and ethical challenges. The drive to Victoria's upscale neighborhood provided time for reviewing our documentation strategy and establishing communication protocols that would enable effective evidence gathering without arousing suspicion. Sophie's questions about legal procedures and her requests for clarification about which specific behaviors constituted criminal activity revealed her determination to understand the full scope of Victoria's wrongdoing and her commitment to gathering information that would support Mother's case. Victoria's apartment building reflected the lifestyle aspirations that had apparently motivated her theft of Mother's life savings. The luxury amenities, prime location, and expensive architectural details created an environment that suggested financial resources far beyond what Victoria's marketing coordinator's salary could reasonably support. The disconnect between Victoria's apparent wealth and her known income sources provided additional evidence of the financial discrepancies that Sophie had initially identified. Victoria greeted us with the excessive enthusiasm that often accompanies guilty consciences, immediately launching into detailed descriptions of wedding preparations that required careful attention for documentation purposes. Her casual references to unexpected financial resources that had enabled expanded celebration plans took on sinister significance given our knowledge of Mother's depleted savings account, though maintaining appropriate responses required constant emotional self-control. The brunch gathering included several of Victoria's friends and colleagues who were eager to hear details about wedding planning expenses and vendor selections. Their questions about budget management and financial planning created opportunities for Victoria to provide specific information about costs and payment methods that could support potential legal proceedings. Sophie's presence as an interested child asking innocent questions about wedding preparations provided additional cover for gathering detailed financial information. Victoria's responses to questions about wedding financing revealed a pattern of vague explanations and deflected inquiries that suggested awareness of the problematic nature of her funding sources. Her references to family assistance and unexpected inheritance provided cover stories that would be easily disproven through proper investigation, while her reluctance to provide specific details suggested consciousness of guilt regarding her actual methods for securing wedding funds. The systematic documentation of Victoria's wedding expenses required careful observation and discreet record-keeping that tested my ability to maintain normal social interactions while conducting covert investigation activities. Sophie's natural tendency toward detailed observation proved invaluable as she noticed and remembered specific vendor names, service descriptions, and cost estimates that Victoria mentioned during casual conversation with her friends and wedding party members. Victoria's wedding planner arrived during the brunch to review final arrangements and present invoices for remaining services that needed immediate payment. The professional interaction provided unprecedented access to specific financial information, as the wedding planner discussed payment schedules, vendor requirements, and last-minute additions that had increased the total celebration costs well beyond the original contracted amounts. The wedding planner's invoice review revealed expenditures that exceeded $100,000 for a single-day celebration, including luxury transportation, premium catering services, exotic floral arrangements, professional photography and videography, designer bridal accessories, and venue enhancements that transformed Victoria's wedding into the type of extravagant event typically associated with celebrity celebrations or wealthy family traditions. Sophie's careful attention to the invoice details and her discreet photography of documents provided crucial evidence that would support calculations of the stolen amounts and demonstrate the direct connection between Mother's financial losses and Victoria's wedding expenditures. Her natural curiosity about wedding planning details provided perfect cover for gathering comprehensive financial documentation without arousing suspicion about our investigative purposes. The contrast between Victoria's elaborate wedding expenses and Mother's current financial insecurity created emotional challenges that required constant management to maintain our investigative cover. The knowledge that every luxury service and premium vendor selection had been funded through theft from a disabled elderly woman created psychological tension that threatened to overwhelm my ability to participate normally in the celebration activities. Victoria's friends expressed admiration for her ability to secure such elaborate wedding arrangements despite her known salary limitations, with several commenting on her apparent financial management skills and asking for advice about funding their own wedding celebrations. Victoria's responses to these inquiries provided additional evidence of her deceptive explanations and her attempts to conceal the actual sources of her wedding funding. The afternoon transitioned to visits with various wedding vendors who had been scheduled to provide final service confirmations and receive remaining payments for their contracted services. Each vendor interaction provided opportunities to observe Victoria's payment methods and gather additional documentation of the systematic expenditure of stolen funds for personal luxury services that served no legitimate family purpose. The florist consultation revealed Victoria's selection of rare orchids and exotic arrangements that required international shipping and specialized handling services. The cost estimates discussed during this meeting exceeded $15,000 for floral decorations alone, representing more than Mother's annual medication expenses and demonstrating the callous disregard for family welfare that had characterized Victoria's theft of carefully accumulated retirement resources. Victoria's payment to the florist involved a bank check drawn on an account that I did not recognize from her previous financial discussions, suggesting the possibility of additional unauthorized access to Mother's financial resources beyond the primary savings account that had already been depleted. Sophie's observation of the account routing numbers visible on the check provided crucial information for potential banking investigations and asset tracing procedures. The photographer meeting provided additional evidence of Victoria's systematic expenditure of stolen funds as she discussed premium service packages that included engagement sessions, wedding day coverage, and post-wedding editing services that exceeded $20,000 in total costs. The photographer's portfolio revealed previous work for clients with significant wealth, confirming that Victoria's wedding celebration was designed to emulate the lifestyle standards of genuinely affluent families rather than her actual economic circumstances. Sophie's interaction with the photographer revealed her growing sophistication in evidence gathering as she asked detailed questions about service costs and payment schedules, while appearing to express natural childhood curiosity about professional photography techniques. Her ability to gather specific financial information without arousing adult suspicion demonstrated remarkable strategic thinking and social awareness for someone her age. The evening concluded with Victoria's discussion of honeymoon plans that involved international travel, luxury accommodations, and exclusive experiences that would extend her expenditure of stolen funds well beyond the wedding celebration itself. The honeymoon budget exceeded $30,000 and included private tours, premium resort accommodations, and specialized recreational activities that represented additional systematic theft from Mother's carefully preserved retirement resources. Victoria's casual attitude toward these extraordinary expenditures revealed the psychological disconnection that had enabled her to steal from a vulnerable family member without apparent remorse or concern for the consequences. Her apparent belief that Mother's financial resources existed for her personal use demonstrated a fundamental moral failure that extended beyond simple financial desperation to encompass entitled exploitation of family relationships. The comprehensive evidence gathered during the day's activities provided substantial documentation of the direct connection between Mother's financial losses and Victoria's wedding expenditures. The systematic nature of the spending patterns, combined with the timing that corresponded to Mother's account withdrawals, created a compelling case for financial elder abuse that would be difficult for Victoria to explain or defend through legitimate means. Sophie's contributions to the evidence-gathering process had exceeded my expectations, as she demonstrated remarkable ability to gather specific information while maintaining appropriate social interactions with adults who had no awareness of our investigative activities. Her natural intelligence and observational skills had proven invaluable for documenting the scope and systematic nature of Victoria's theft. The psychological toll of maintaining normal family relationships while secretly documenting evidence of financial betrayal created emotional exhaustion that required careful management to avoid compromising our investigative effectiveness. The knowledge that every smile and congratulatory comment was part of a strategic deception designed to protect Mother and seek justice for Victoria's theft created cognitive dissonance that challenged my emotional stability. The evening's reflection on the day's discoveries revealed the transformation that had occurred in my understanding of Victoria's character and the systematic nature of her betrayal of family trust. What had initially appeared to be impulsive financial desperation had proven to be carefully planned theft that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of financial systems and deliberate exploitation of Mother's vulnerability and trust. Sophie's bedtime conversation about the day's activities revealed her growing understanding of the moral complexities involved in seeking justice while maintaining family relationships. Her questions about whether Victoria understood the harm she was causing demonstrated her developing sense of justice and her concern for Mother's welfare that motivated our continued investigation despite the emotional costs involved. The evidence gathered during Victoria's wedding preparation events provided a foundation for potential legal action, while revealing the full scope of the systematic financial exploitation that Mother had suffered. The documentation would support criminal charges, civil asset recovery proceedings, and protective measures designed to prevent additional theft from Mother's remaining financial resources. The weekend's investigation had transformed Sophie and me from passive victims of family financial abuse into active agents seeking justice and accountability for Victoria's betrayal of trust. The evidence-gathering process had revealed both the systematic nature of the theft and the callous disregard for family welfare that had motivated Victoria's actions, creating moral clarity about the necessity of pursuing legal remedies, regardless of the impact on family relationships. As we prepared for continued investigation activities during Victoria's wedding celebration, I reflected on the remarkable transformation that had occurred in both Sophie's capabilities and my own commitment to protecting vulnerable family members from financial exploitation. The path ahead would require sustained courage and strategic thinking, but the evidence we had gathered provided hope that justice could be achieved and Mother's dignity could be restored through accountability for Victoria's systematic theft of her life savings. The Monday morning following our successful evidence gathering at Victoria's wedding preparation events brought unexpected complications that threatened to undermine our carefully planned investigation strategy. Victoria called while I was preparing Sophie for school, her tone carrying an unfamiliar edge of suspicion that immediately triggered my protective instincts and raised concerns about whether our investigative activities had been detected, despite our careful attention to maintaining normal family behavior patterns. Victoria's conversation revealed subtle but significant changes in her approach to family interactions, particularly her increased scrutiny of my questions about wedding details, and her reluctance to share specific information about vendor payments and service arrangements. Her previously enthusiastic openness about wedding planning had been replaced by guarded responses that suggested growing awareness of potential surveillance or investigation of her financial activities. The shift in Victoria's behavior patterns created immediate challenges for continued evidence gathering, while raising serious concerns about potential retaliation against Mother if Victoria discovered the full scope of our investigation into her systematic theft of retirement funds. The delicate balance between gathering necessary documentation and protecting Mother from additional financial or emotional harm required constant recalibration of our strategic approach. Sophie's observations about Victoria's changed demeanor during the phone conversation demonstrated her remarkable sensitivity to adult emotional nuances and her growing understanding of the psychological dynamics involved in maintaining investigative cover while dealing with increasingly suspicious subjects. Her questions about whether Victoria suspected our activities revealed sophisticated thinking about operational security that impressed me, while simultaneously highlighting the complexity of involving a child in such serious adult conflicts. The morning routine of preparing for work and school provided necessary normalcy, while I processed the implications of Victoria's apparent suspicion and developed contingency plans for protecting both Mother and our investigation from potential interference. The psychological stress of maintaining dual identities as both loving sister and covert investigator created mental exhaustion that required careful management to avoid compromising either my professional responsibilities or my family obligations. My arrival at Riverside General Hospital brought welcome distraction through routine medical billing responsibilities, though the systematic attention to detail required for my professional work served as valuable preparation for the increasingly sophisticated investigation techniques that would be necessary for building a comprehensive case against Victoria. The parallel between detecting insurance fraud in medical billing and documenting financial elder abuse provided transferable skills that enhanced my confidence in pursuing justice for Mother. The midday phone call from Sunset Manor's administrative office introduced new complications that revealed the extent of Victoria's financial manipulation and her efforts to conceal evidence of her systematic theft from Mother's accounts. The facility's billing department reported irregularities in Mother's payment arrangements that suggested unauthorized changes to her financial authorizations and payment methods for ongoing care services. Mother's care coordinator explained that Victoria had recently contacted the facility to modify payment procedures and reduce certain services that Mother had previously approved for her ongoing medical support and quality of life maintenance. These changes included elimination of specialized physical therapy sessions, reduction in dietary supplements, and limitations on social activities that provided essential emotional support during Mother's adjustment to progressive illness management. The systematic reduction of Mother's care services revealed Victoria's callous approach to managing the consequences of her theft, prioritizing continued concealment of financial irregularities over Mother's medical needs and emotional well-being. The evidence of deliberate harm to Mother's care quality added elder neglect charges to the growing list of potential criminal violations that Victoria's actions had created. My immediate response involved contacting Mother to verify her awareness of these service changes and to assess whether Victoria had manipulated her into agreeing to reductions that were contrary to her medical interests and personal preferences. Mother's confusion about the modifications confirmed that Victoria had exceeded her authority and was making decisions that prioritized financial concealment over appropriate care for a vulnerable family member. The conversation with Mother revealed additional concerning information about recent interactions with Victoria that suggested systematic manipulation designed to discourage Mother from monitoring her financial accounts or seeking independent verification of her asset management. Victoria had apparently convinced Mother that frequent account checking was unnecessary and potentially harmful given her medical condition, effectively isolating her from information that would reveal the ongoing theft. Mother's growing confusion about her financial situation reflected not only the progression of her medical condition, but also the psychological impact of systematic manipulation by someone she trusted completely for protection and advocacy. The combination of medical vulnerability and emotional exploitation created a particularly egregious form of elder abuse that demanded immediate intervention to prevent additional harm. The afternoon brought an unexpected visit from Marcus, Victoria's fiancé, who appeared at my workplace with concerns about Victoria's recent behavior patterns and her secretive approach to wedding financial management. His presence created both opportunities for gathering additional information and risks of exposing our investigation if he reported our conversation back to Victoria with details that could compromise our strategic position. Marcus revealed his growing unease about Victoria's explanations for their wedding funding sources and her reluctance to provide documentation that would support the loan applications they had submitted for their planned honeymoon expenses. His questions about Victoria's family financial resources suggested that she had provided misleading information about Mother's willingness and ability to support their wedding celebration through substantial monetary gifts. The conversation with Marcus provided crucial insight into Victoria's systematic deception, which extended beyond theft to encompass fabrication of family financial circumstances and manipulation of her fiancé's understanding of their wedding funding sources. Victoria had apparently convinced Marcus that Mother had enthusiastically provided wedding funding as a generous expression of family support, rather than acknowledging that the money had been stolen without permission or knowledge. Marcus's concern about Victoria's increasing secrecy and her defensive responses to questions about financial documentation revealed relationship strain that could potentially be leveraged to encourage his cooperation with investigation efforts. His genuine care for Victoria was complicated by growing awareness that her behavior pattern suggested involvement in activities that could create legal and financial problems for both of them. The ethical complexity of Marcus's situation required careful consideration of how to provide him with necessary information about Victoria's criminal activities, while protecting the ongoing investigation and avoiding premature confrontation that could trigger additional theft or evidence destruction. His position as an unwitting accomplice to spending stolen funds created both legal vulnerabilities for him and opportunities for encouraging cooperation with justice efforts. The evening brought a disturbing phone call from Mother reporting that Victoria had visited Sunset Manor with legal documents that she claimed required immediate signature for updating Mother's estate planning and financial management arrangements. Mother's description of Victoria's urgent insistence and her reluctance to allow time for careful review suggested manipulation designed to secure additional authority over Mother's remaining assets. Mother's account of Victoria's visit revealed systematic pressure tactics that included emotional manipulation, false urgency claims, and threats of family relationship damage if Mother did not immediately comply with Victoria's requests for expanded financial authority. The coercive techniques demonstrated sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation and exploitation of Mother's emotional vulnerability during her medical decline. The legal documents that Victoria had presented apparently included modifications to power of attorney arrangements that would expand her authority over Mother's healthcare decisions and eliminate requirements for third-party oversight of financial transactions. The proposed changes would effectively remove all safeguards that currently provided limited protection for Mother's remaining assets from additional theft or mismanagement. Mother's instinctive reluctance to sign documents without careful review had prevented Victoria from securing additional authority. But the incident revealed the escalating pressure that Victoria was applying to conceal evidence of her theft and secure continued access to Mother's financial resources. The attempted manipulation demonstrated consciousness of guilt and awareness that her previous theft was at risk of discovery. Sophie's bedtime conversation about the day's developments revealed her growing understanding of the systematic nature of Victoria's manipulation and her determination to help protect Mother from additional harm. Her questions about legal procedures and her suggestions for gathering additional evidence demonstrated remarkable strategic thinking, while highlighting the moral clarity that motivated her continued involvement in seeking justice. The psychological toll of managing multiple simultaneous challenges while maintaining normal routines for Sophie and professional responsibilities created stress that required careful attention to avoid compromising either our investigation effectiveness or our family stability. The complexity of protecting mother while gathering evidence against Victoria demanded skills and emotional resilience that tested the limits of my personal capabilities. The evening's research into legal procedures for emergency protection of vulnerable adults revealed options for seeking court intervention to limit Victoria's authority over mother's affairs, while investigation of financial abuse proceeded through appropriate channels. The protective measures would require comprehensive documentation of Victoria's theft and manipulation, but could provide essential safeguards against continued exploitation. The preparation of legal documentation to support protective intervention required systematic organization of all evidence gathered during our investigation, including financial records, witness statements, and documentation of Victoria's systematic manipulation of mother's care arrangements. The comprehensive approach demanded attention to detail and strategic presentation that would persuade legal authorities to take immediate protective action. The realization that Victoria's behavior was escalating in response to perceived threats to her theft scheme created urgency about securing protection for mother, while completing evidence gathering that would support criminal prosecution and civil asset recovery. The window of opportunity for preventing additional harm was narrowing, as Victoria's desperation increased, and her willingness to engage in additional manipulation and potential illegal activities expanded. Sophie's continued observations and strategic suggestions provided essential support for navigating the increasingly complex challenges of protecting mother while building a comprehensive case against Victoria. Her remarkable maturity and commitment to justice served as inspiration for maintaining determination despite the mounting obstacles and psychological pressure created by Victoria's defensive responses to investigation activities. The path ahead required sustained courage and strategic thinking to overcome Victoria's growing resistance while protecting all family members from retaliation and ensuring that justice could ultimately be achieved. The evidence gathered thus far provided a strong foundation, but Victoria's awareness of potential investigation created new challenges that would test our resolve and capabilities in ways we had not yet experienced. The Tuesday morning brought clarity born from necessity, as I transformed our kitchen table into a strategic planning center, where Sophie and I could develop comprehensive countermeasures to Victoria's increasingly sophisticated efforts to conceal her theft and manipulate mother into providing additional financial resources. The systematic approach required careful documentation of all evidence gathered thus far, while developing multiple contingency plans that would protect mother regardless of Victoria's defensive tactics or potential retaliation strategies. Sophie's contributions to the planning process demonstrated remarkable analytical capabilities, as she organized our collected evidence into categories that would support different legal interventions and protective measures. Her natural inclination towards systematic thinking proved invaluable for creating comprehensive documentation packages that would meet the evidentiary requirements for criminal prosecution, civil asset recovery, and emergency protective orders, designed to safeguard vulnerable adults from continued exploitation. The development of our strategic framework required careful consideration of multiple simultaneous objectives that included protecting mother from immediate harm, gathering additional evidence of Victoria's criminal activities, preventing destruction of financial records, and building alliances with individuals who could provide essential support during legal proceedings. The complexity of coordinating these diverse requirements demanded project management skills that neither my professional background nor personal experience had previously required. My research into elder abuse protection procedures revealed the existence of specialized legal resources designed specifically for families dealing with financial exploitation by trusted individuals. The Adult Protective Services Division of our County Social Services Department maintained dedicated investigators with expertise in financial crimes against vulnerable adults, while the District Attorney's Office operated a specialized unit that focused exclusively on prosecution of family-related financial abuse cases. The consultation with Adult Protective Services provided essential guidance about evidence requirements and procedural timelines that would govern any formal intervention to protect mother from continued exploitation. The investigating social worker explained that emergency protective orders could be obtained within 48 hours if sufficient evidence demonstrated immediate risk of additional financial harm or coercive manipulation by individuals with authority over vulnerable adult affairs. The evidence thresholds for emergency intervention required comprehensive documentation of both the systematic nature of financial theft and evidence of ongoing manipulation designed to secure additional access to victim resources. Our collected evidence exceeded these requirements substantially, but the formal presentation demanded professional organization and strategic sequencing that would enable rapid judicial review and immediate protective implementation. Sophie's role in evidence organization expanded as she demonstrated remarkable capability for creating visual presentations that clearly illustrated the connection between Mother's financial losses and Victoria's wedding expenditures. Her systematic approach to documenting timeline correlations and expense categorizations provided crucial support for building compelling arguments that would persuade legal authorities to take immediate protective action. The development of our legal strategy required coordination with multiple professional resources that included elder law attorneys, financial forensics specialists, and victim advocacy organizations with expertise in family financial abuse cases. The complexity of these relationships demanded communication skills and professional credibility that challenged my comfort zones, while providing essential support for navigating sophisticated legal and investigative procedures. The consultation with elder law attorney Patricia Rodriguez provided crucial strategic guidance about asset recovery procedures and criminal prosecution coordination that would maximize the potential for full restitution while ensuring appropriate criminal accountability for Victoria's systematic theft. Attorney Rodriguez emphasized the importance of preserving evidence integrity while building comprehensive documentation that would support multiple legal remedies pursued simultaneously. The financial forensics analysis revealed additional sophistication in Victoria's theft scheme that extended beyond simple account withdrawals to include systematic manipulation of investment statements and fabrication of financial documents designed to conceal the scope of her unauthorized access to Mother's retirement resources. The evidence of document forgery added additional criminal charges while providing stronger foundations for asset forfeiture proceedings. Marcus's continued concerns about Victoria's secretive financial behavior created opportunities for developing alliance relationships that could provide crucial insider information about Victoria's activities and plans. His genuine desire to understand their wedding funding sources reflected ethical standards that could be leveraged to encourage cooperation with investigation efforts, though the approach required careful consideration of legal and ethical implications. The strategic outreach to Marcus involved gradual disclosure of information about Victoria's financial irregularities, while providing opportunities for him to verify suspicious activities through his own observations and inquiries. The methodical approach protected our investigation security while enabling Marcus to reach independent conclusions about Victoria's criminal behavior that would support voluntary cooperation rather than coercive manipulation. Marcus's growing awareness of Victoria's deceptive practices regarding their wedding funding sources created relationship tensions that complicated his emotional investment in their upcoming marriage, while generating internal conflicts about his moral obligations to address criminal activities. His position as an unwitting beneficiary of stolen funds created legal vulnerabilities that motivated cooperation with investigation efforts, while complicating his personal relationships and future planning. The evening consultation with victim advocate Sarah Chen provided essential guidance about protective measures for Mother and strategic approaches for minimizing emotional trauma during legal proceedings that would necessarily involve public exposure of family financial abuse. The advocacy perspective emphasized the importance of maintaining Mother's dignity and autonomy while ensuring that protective interventions addressed her immediate safety needs and long-term financial security. The coordination with Sunset Manor's administrative team established protocols for monitoring Victoria's future visits and preventing unauthorized modifications to Mother's care arrangements or financial authorizations. The facility's security measures would provide essential documentation of any attempted manipulation, while creating barriers to Victoria's access to Mother during vulnerable periods when coercive tactics might prove effective. Sophie's bedtime conversation revealed her developing understanding of legal procedures and her growing confidence in our ability to achieve justice for Mother, despite Victoria's increasingly desperate attempts to conceal evidence and secure additional financial resources. Her questions about courtroom procedures and her suggestions for additional evidence gathering demonstrated remarkable maturity while highlighting her continued commitment to protecting Mother from further exploitation. The comprehensive case file preparation required systematic organization of financial records, witness statements, expert analysis reports, and timeline documentation, that would support multiple legal interventions pursued through different judicial and administrative channels. The complexity of maintaining evidence integrity while ensuring accessibility for various legal professionals demanded attention to detail that tested my organizational capabilities and professional competence. The development of protective measures for Sophie during the escalating family conflict required careful consideration of age-appropriate involvement levels that would preserve her emotional well-being, while maintaining her valuable contributions to evidence gathering and mother's emotional support. The balance between protecting childhood innocence and acknowledging Sophie's remarkable capabilities demanded constant evaluation and adjustment of our strategic approaches. The coordination with law enforcement agencies required preliminary case presentations that would establish formal investigation procedures while ensuring that evidence gathered through our private investigation would meet admissibility standards for criminal prosecution. The relationship with Detective Michael Santos of the Financial Crimes Unit provided essential guidance about evidence preservation and witness protection that would safeguard our investigation integrity. The financial analysis coordination with forensic accountant David Park revealed additional dimensions of Victoria's theft scheme that included systematic manipulation of tax documents and potential insurance fraud related to fabricated medical expenses that had been used to justify emergency withdrawals from mother's retirement accounts. The expanded scope of criminal activity provided additional leverage for prosecution while complicating asset recovery procedures. The strategic timeline for coordinating multiple legal interventions required careful sequencing that would maximize protective effectiveness while minimizing opportunities for Victoria to destroy evidence or transfer additional assets beyond recovery jurisdiction. The coordination demanded sophisticated understanding of legal procedures and strategic timing that challenged my analytical capabilities while providing essential structure for managing complex concurrent proceedings. Sophie's contributions to strategic planning expanded to include development of communication protocols that would enable continued coordination with mother while minimizing Victoria's awareness of our protective activities. Her natural understanding of family dynamics and her remarkable ability to maintain normal behavioral patterns while conducting sophisticated investigative activities provided essential operational security for our expanded legal strategy. The preparation for emergency protective intervention required comprehensive documentation packages that would enable judicial review within statutory timeframes while providing sufficient evidence detail to support immediate implementation of protective orders. The urgency created by Victoria's escalating manipulation tactics demanded efficiency that tested our organizational capabilities while maintaining evidence quality standards required for legal proceedings. The alliance building with other family members who had observed Victoria's suspicious financial behavior revealed additional instances of manipulation and deception that strengthened our comprehensive case while providing essential witness testimony for legal proceedings. The expanded network of concerned relatives provided both emotional support and practical assistance that enhanced our investigation effectiveness and protective capabilities. The psychological preparation for sustained legal conflict required development of emotional resilience strategies that would enable continued effectiveness despite inevitable retaliation attempts by Victoria and potential family relationship destruction that might result from pursuing criminal prosecution. The commitment to justice for mother demanded personal courage that transcended comfort zones while maintaining focus on moral principles that justified difficult decisions. The evening reflection on our strategic planning progress revealed the remarkable transformation that had occurred in both Sophie's capabilities and my own development of sophisticated investigative and legal coordination skills. The necessity of protecting mother from continued exploitation had generated personal growth that exceeded anything my previous experience had required, while demonstrating the extraordinary capabilities that ordinary people can develop when motivated by love and commitment to justice. The comprehensive strategic framework established clear pathways for achieving multiple objectives that included immediate protection for mother, full recovery of stolen assets, appropriate criminal accountability for Victoria, and long-term safeguards against future exploitation. The systematic approach provided confidence that justice could be achieved, despite Victoria's sophisticated defensive tactics and her continued access to mother's emotional vulnerabilities. The path ahead required sustained implementation of carefully coordinated legal interventions while maintaining operational security that would prevent Victoria from anticipating or undermining protective measures designed to safeguard Mother's remaining resources and ensure her continued access to appropriate medical care. The strategic foundation established through careful planning would enable effective response to Victoria's anticipated escalation while preserving evidence integrity and maintaining focus on achieving comprehensive justice for systematic financial elder abuse. Wednesday morning commenced with a phone call from Marcus that marked the beginning of a crucial alliance in our efforts to protect Mother and achieve justice for Victoria's systematic financial exploitation. His voice carried the weight of someone who had spent sleepless hours processing disturbing revelations about the woman he planned to marry, and his willingness to discuss Victoria's deceptive financial practices represented a significant breakthrough in our strategic positioning. Marcus revealed that his independent investigation into Victoria's wedding funding claims had uncovered additional evidence of systematic deception that extended far beyond the theft of Mother's retirement savings. His access to Victoria's personal financial records through their joint wedding planning activities had exposed a pattern of fraudulent loan applications, fabricated income statements, and forged documentation that implicated Victoria in a comprehensive scheme of financial fraud that could result in federal criminal charges. The conversation with Marcus required careful navigation of legal and ethical considerations, while building trust that would support continued cooperation in gathering evidence and protecting Mother from additional exploitation. His position as Victoria's fiancé created complex loyalties and potential legal vulnerabilities that demanded sensitive handling to ensure that his assistance would enhance rather than compromise our investigation effectiveness. Marcus disclosed that Victoria had provided false information about Mother's financial contributions to their wedding expenses when applying for credit lines and personal loans that would fund their honeymoon and early married life expenses. The fraudulent applications included fabricated gift letters purporting to document Mother's voluntary financial support, when the actual source of these funds was systematic theft from accounts that Mother had not authorized Victoria to access. The documentation that Marcus provided included loan application materials, credit statements, and correspondence with financial institutions that demonstrated Victoria's sophisticated understanding of fraud techniques and her willingness to implicate Mother in criminal activities without her knowledge or consent. The evidence revealed that Victoria's theft had been accompanied by identity manipulation that could result in Mother facing unwanted scrutiny from financial institutions and regulatory authorities. Sophie's presence during my conversation with Marcus provided valuable perspective on the ethical dimensions of Victoria's betrayal, while demonstrating her continued growth in understanding complex adult relationships and criminal behavior patterns. Her questions about Marcus's moral obligations and her observations about trust within family relationships revealed sophisticated thinking about justice and accountability that informed our strategic approach to alliance building. The coordination with Adult Protective Services investigator Linda Thompson established formal protective procedures that would monitor Mother's welfare while gathering additional evidence of Victoria's manipulation tactics and financial exploitation patterns. Investigator Thompson's expertise in elder abuse cases provided essential guidance about documentation requirements and intervention strategies that would maximize protective effectiveness while preserving evidence integrity for criminal prosecution. Investigator Thompson explained that our case represented one of the most sophisticated instances of family financial abuse that her department had encountered, with evidence quality and comprehensive documentation that exceeded standard thresholds for emergency intervention. The systematic nature of Victoria's theft, combined with her escalating manipulation tactics, created immediate risks that justified expedited protective measures and coordinated law enforcement involvement. The formal protective investigation required coordination with multiple agencies that included the District Attorney's Elder Abuse Unit, the Financial Crimes Division of the Police Department, and specialized social services personnel with expertise in vulnerable adult protection. The multi-agency approach would provide comprehensive response capabilities while ensuring that all aspects of Victoria's criminal behavior would be thoroughly investigated and appropriately prosecuted. Attorney Patricia Rodriguez's expanded analysis of our evidence revealed additional legal remedies that could provide both immediate protection for Mother and long-term safeguards against similar exploitation by family members or other trusted individuals. The comprehensive legal strategy included emergency protective orders, asset freeze procedures, criminal prosecution coordination, and civil recovery actions that would address all dimensions of Victoria's systematic financial abuse. The legal framework established clear procedures for preserving mother's autonomy and decision-making authority, while providing necessary protections against manipulation and coercion by individuals who might exploit her medical condition for personal financial gain. The protective measures balanced respect for mother's independence with realistic acknowledgement of vulnerabilities that required external safeguards and monitoring. Sophie's interaction with the various professionals involved in building our protective alliance demonstrated her remarkable ability to communicate effectively with adults while maintaining appropriate boundaries regarding confidential information and strategic planning details. Her natural maturity and clear understanding of the moral issues involved impressed all professionals, while highlighting the importance of including her perspective in our comprehensive approach to seeking justice. The coordination with Sunset Manor's administrative team expanded to include formal documentation procedures that would create comprehensive records of all interactions between Victoria and Mother, while preventing unauthorized modifications to care arrangements or financial authorizations. The facility's cooperation provided essential institutional support for protective measures, while ensuring that Mother's daily life would continue normally despite the ongoing investigation. The evening meeting with other family members who had observed Victoria's suspicious financial behavior revealed a disturbing pattern of manipulation and exploitation that extended beyond Mother's situation, to include attempts to secure financial assistance from elderly relatives and family friends through fabricated emergency situations and deceptive requests for temporary loans that were never repaid. Cousin Robert Martinez provided documentation of Victoria's attempts to secure emergency loans from his elderly parents through fabricated medical crisis claims that bore striking similarities to the manipulation tactics she had employed with Mother. The pattern of targeting vulnerable elderly family members for financial exploitation demonstrated systematic predatory behavior that supported stronger criminal charges and enhanced protective justifications. Aunt Carmen Rodriguez shared similar experiences involving Victoria's requests for financial assistance through manipulative appeals that exploited family loyalty and concern for emergency situations that subsequent investigation revealed to be completely fabricated. The expanded evidence of systematic exploitation provided additional witness testimony while demonstrating the broader scope of Victoria's criminal activities. The family alliance building process required careful attention to emotional dynamics and relationship preservation, while maintaining focus on protective objectives and evidence-gathering requirements. The revelation that Victoria had systematically exploited multiple family members created anger and betrayal feelings that needed constructive channeling toward justice efforts, rather than destructive family conflict that could compromise investigation effectiveness. Sophie's observations about family dynamics during these alliance-building meetings provided valuable insights about communication strategies and relationship management that enhanced our ability to maintain productive cooperation among relatives with different perspectives and emotional responses to Victoria's betrayal. Her natural diplomatic skills proved invaluable for managing complex group discussions while maintaining focus on protective objectives. The coordination with financial forensics specialist David Park revealed additional sophistication in Victoria's fraud scheme that included systematic manipulation of insurance claims and medical expense documentation designed to justify emergency withdrawals from Mother's retirement accounts for fabricated healthcare needs. The evidence of insurance fraud added federal criminal exposure while complicating asset recovery procedures. The forensic analysis documented patterns of systematic financial manipulation that demonstrated professional-level understanding of banking procedures, insurance regulations, and legal documentation requirements that suggested Victoria had received assistance from individuals with specialized knowledge of financial systems and fraud techniques. The possibility of additional co-conspirators expanded the scope of investigation while providing additional leverage for encouraging cooperation from individuals who might face criminal exposure. Marcus's continued cooperation provided access to Victoria's personal communications and financial records that revealed her awareness of the criminal nature of her activities and her deliberate efforts to conceal evidence while planning additional thefts from Mother's remaining assets. The evidence of criminal intent and ongoing planning supported stronger charges while justifying immediate protective intervention. The alliance with victim advocacy organization representatives provided essential support for Mother's emotional well-being during the investigation process, while ensuring that her dignity and autonomy would be preserved throughout legal proceedings. The specialized expertise in elder abuse recovery provided valuable guidance about managing trauma and maintaining family relationships during criminal prosecution and asset recovery procedures. The coordination with Detective Michael Santos established formal criminal investigation procedures that would ensure evidence admissibility while providing witness protection resources for family members who might face retaliation from Victoria or her associates. The law enforcement involvement provided essential security measures while validating the seriousness of Victoria's criminal activities and the justification for comprehensive prosecution efforts. The strategic communication protocols developed through alliance-building efforts ensured that all participants understood their roles and responsibilities while maintaining operational security that would prevent Victoria from anticipating or undermining protective measures. The coordination demanded sophisticated project management skills while providing essential structure for managing complex multi-party efforts toward common objectives. Sophie's continued contributions to alliance building included development of communication strategies that would enable Mother to participate meaningfully in protective planning while minimizing her exposure to emotional trauma or manipulation pressure from Victoria. Her understanding of Mother's emotional needs and communication preferences provided valuable guidance for maintaining supportive relationships during challenging legal proceedings. The comprehensive alliance network established through strategic outreach and professional coordination created unprecedented resources for achieving justice while providing multiple layers of protection for Mother against continued exploitation or retaliation. The collaboration demonstrated how systematic approach to relationship building could create powerful advocacy capabilities that exceeded what any individual effort could accomplish. The evening reflection on alliance building progress revealed remarkable transformation in our collective capabilities for addressing complex criminal behavior while maintaining focus on protective objectives and restorative justice principles. The network of professional and family support provided confidence that comprehensive accountability could be achieved while preserving Mother's dignity and ensuring her continued access to appropriate care and security. The foundation established through strategic alliance building created clear pathways for coordinated action that would expose Victoria's criminal activities while implementing protective measures that would prevent additional exploitation. The systematic approach to relationship development had generated unprecedented resources for achieving justice that reflected the power of collective action motivated by shared commitment to protecting vulnerable family members from systematic abuse and exploitation. Thursday morning arrived with the weight of coordinated action as our comprehensive alliance prepared to implement the first formal intervention designed to protect Mother while beginning the systematic exposure of Victoria's financial crimes to appropriate authorities. The emergency protective order had been approved through expedited judicial review, and Adult Protective Services investigator Linda Thompson was scheduled to serve the documents at Sunset Manor during Mother's morning medical appointment, when Victoria would be present for what she believed was routine care coordination. The timing of the intervention had been carefully orchestrated to maximize protective effectiveness while minimizing opportunities for Victoria to destroy evidence or transfer additional assets beyond recovery jurisdiction. Detective Michael Santos positioned surveillance personnel at strategic locations to monitor Victoria's movements and prevent any attempts to flee or dispose of incriminating materials that could compromise criminal prosecution efforts. Sophie accompanied me to my workplace that morning rather than attending school, as the day's events would require my immediate availability for coordination with legal professionals and law enforcement personnel throughout the intervention process. Her presence provided emotional support while ensuring that she could observe firsthand how systematic planning and coordinated action could overcome even sophisticated criminal schemes when motivated by commitment to justice and protection of vulnerable family members. The morning coordination call with attorney Patricia Rodriguez confirmed that all legal documentation was properly prepared for immediate implementation of protective measures that would freeze Victoria's access to Mother's remaining assets, while establishing court-supervised oversight of all future financial decisions affecting Mother's care and security. The comprehensive legal framework would prevent additional exploitation while preserving evidence for criminal prosecution and civil asset recovery proceedings. Marcus arrived at my office building shortly after 9 o'clock, carrying additional evidence that he had gathered through continued monitoring of Victoria's financial activities and communication patterns. His overnight review of their joint credit card statements had revealed emergency cash advances and luxury purchases that coincided precisely with the timeline of Mother's account withdrawals, providing irrefutable documentation of the direct connection between stolen funds and wedding expenditures. The evidence that Marcus provided included detailed records of Victoria's attempts to secure additional credit lines through applications that contained false information about their combined household income and asset holdings. The fraudulent applications demonstrated Victoria's escalating desperation to maintain her elaborate wedding plans while concealing the illegal sources of her existing funding, creating additional federal criminal exposure that would strengthen prosecution leverage. Marcus expressed profound emotional distress about discovering the extent of Victoria's deception and his unwitting participation in spending money that had been stolen from a vulnerable elderly woman who trusted her daughter completely. His commitment to cooperation with investigation efforts reflected genuine moral courage that required personal sacrifice of his relationship and future plans in service of justice and accountability. The coordination meeting with Detective Santos provided final confirmation that surveillance personnel were positioned appropriately to monitor Victoria's response to the protective intervention while preventing any attempts to intimidate witnesses or destroy evidence that could compromise prosecution efforts. The law enforcement presence would ensure Mother's immediate safety while documenting Victoria's reactions and statements that could provide additional evidence of criminal intent and consciousness of guilt. Sophie's questions about the intervention procedures demonstrated her continued growth in understanding complex legal processes, while highlighting her emotional investment in achieving justice for Mother's systematic exploitation. Her calm confidence in our coordinated efforts provided inspiration for maintaining focus on protective objectives, despite the personal costs that would inevitably accompany formal exposure of Victoria's criminal activities. The 10 o'clock phone call from Investigator Thompson confirmed that the protective intervention was proceeding according to plan, with Victoria's shocked reaction to the emergency protective order providing clear evidence of her awareness that her theft scheme had been discovered and formally documented. Victoria's immediate demands for legal representation and her refusal to answer questions about her unauthorized access to Mother's accounts demonstrated consciousness of guilt that would support criminal prosecution efforts. Mother's response to the protective intervention reflected both relief at finally receiving formal protection from Victoria's manipulation and profound sadness at discovering the extent of her daughter's betrayal and systematic exploitation of family trust. The emotional complexity of the situation required careful management to ensure that Mother's well-being remained the primary focus, while gathering additional evidence and implementing comprehensive safeguards against future exploitation. Victoria's attempts to contact Marcus during the protective intervention created opportunities for documenting her efforts to coordinate alibis and manipulate witness testimony that could compromise prosecution efforts. The recorded conversations revealed Victoria's sophisticated understanding of legal procedures and her immediate focus on concealing evidence rather than expressing remorse for her systematic theft from a vulnerable family member. The midday coordination call with forensic accountant David Park confirmed that preliminary asset tracing had identified substantial transfers to offshore accounts that would require international cooperation for recovery efforts. The complexity of Victoria's money laundering activities demonstrated professional-level sophistication that suggested possible involvement of additional co-conspirators, with specialized knowledge of international financial systems and regulatory avoidance techniques. The afternoon brought unexpected developments as Victoria's wedding vendors began contacting Marcus with concerns about payment irregularities and requests for verification of funding sources that had been used for their contracted services. The vendor inquiries revealed that Victoria's systematic theft had created financial exposure for multiple businesses that had unknowingly accepted stolen funds in payment for luxury wedding services. The wedding vendor complications created additional pressure for Victoria while providing our investigation with access to comprehensive documentation of how stolen funds had been systematically converted into personal luxury services that served no legitimate family purpose. The vendor cooperation would support asset forfeiture proceedings while demonstrating the scope and systematic nature of Victoria's criminal enterprise. Sophie's afternoon observations about the coordinated response to Victoria's criminal activities revealed her growing understanding of how justice systems function when properly activated through comprehensive evidence and strategic coordination. Her questions about victim rights and restitution procedures demonstrated sophisticated thinking about restorative justice principles that informed our continued efforts to achieve accountability while protecting Mother's dignity and autonomy. The emergency meeting with Mother at Sunset Manor provided opportunities to assess her emotional state while ensuring that she understood the protective measures that had been implemented on her behalf. Mother's gratitude for finally receiving formal protection was tempered by profound sadness about the destruction of her relationship with Victoria, and her concerns about the impact on family relationships that had previously provided essential emotional support. Mother's account of Victoria's behavior during the protective intervention revealed additional evidence of manipulation attempts and threats designed to discourage cooperation with investigation efforts. Victoria's immediate response to formal investigation had included emotional manipulation tactics that exploited Mother's love and concern for family relationships, while attempting to convince her that the theft had been motivated by family loyalty rather than personal greed. The evening coordination call with the district attorney's elder abuse unit confirmed that formal criminal charges would be filed within 48 hours, based on the comprehensive evidence that our investigation had gathered and the additional documentation obtained through the protective intervention. The prosecution strategy would include charges for financial elder abuse, identity theft, money laundering, and fraud that could result in substantial prison sentences and mandatory restitution for all stolen assets. The prosecutor's assessment of our evidence quality and comprehensiveness indicated that the case represented one of the strongest elder abuse prosecutions that the office had pursued, with documentation standards and witness cooperation that provided exceptional likelihood of successful conviction and full asset recovery. The systematic approach to evidence gathering and alliance building had created unprecedented prosecutorial advantages that would ensure accountability for Victoria's crimes. Marcus's evening decision to terminate his engagement with Victoria demonstrated remarkable moral courage that required personal sacrifice of his planned future in service of justice and protection of Mother's welfare. His commitment to continued cooperation with prosecution efforts, despite the emotional costs, reflected ethical standards that provided inspiration for maintaining determination throughout the challenging legal proceedings ahead. The coordination with victim advocacy representatives established ongoing support services for Mother that would address both her immediate emotional needs and her long-term recovery from the trauma of systematic exploitation by someone she trusted completely. The specialized resources would ensure that Mother's dignity and autonomy would be preserved throughout prosecution and recovery proceedings, while providing essential support for rebuilding financial security. Sophie's bedtime reflection on the day's events revealed her satisfaction with seeing justice systems respond effectively to systematic criminal behavior, while protecting vulnerable family members from continued exploitation. Her observations about the power of coordinated action and comprehensive preparation provided valuable perspective on how ordinary individuals can achieve extraordinary results when motivated by commitment to justice and protection of others. The first major confrontation had exceeded our expectations for protective effectiveness, while generating additional evidence that would strengthen prosecution efforts and enhance prospects for full asset recovery. The systematic approach to intervention planning had created coordinated response capabilities that demonstrated how strategic alliance building and comprehensive preparation could overcome even sophisticated criminal schemes. The evening analysis of intervention results revealed that Victoria's immediate response to formal investigation had provided additional evidence of criminal intent and consciousness of guilt that would support stronger charges and enhanced penalties during prosecution proceedings. Her focus on concealing evidence rather than expressing remorse had confirmed the calculated nature of her systematic exploitation and the necessity of comprehensive legal accountability. The protective measures implemented through coordinated intervention had achieved immediate safety for Mother, while establishing comprehensive safeguards against future exploitation by Victoria or other individuals who might attempt to take advantage of her medical condition and emotional vulnerability. The legal framework would ensure that Mother's remaining years would be characterized by dignity and security rather than continued exploitation and manipulation. The success of the first major confrontation provided confidence that our systematic approach to justice seeking would ultimately achieve comprehensive accountability for Victoria's crimes, while protecting Mother and deterring similar exploitation of other vulnerable family members. The coordinated effort had demonstrated how individual courage and strategic planning could generate collective action capable of overcoming sophisticated criminal behavior through proper legal channels and professional expertise. Friday morning commenced with an unexpected development that threatened to undermine the protective measures we had successfully implemented through coordinated intervention the previous day. Victoria had retained the services of criminal defense attorney Jonathan Hawthorne, whose reputation for aggressive tactics and sophisticated legal maneuvering presented formidable challenges to our prosecution strategy and asset recovery efforts. Attorney Hawthorne's immediate filing of counter motions questioned the validity of our evidence, while challenging the emergency protective order on procedural grounds that could potentially restore Victoria's access to Mother's remaining financial resources. The legal counterstrike revealed Victoria's sophisticated understanding of criminal defense strategies and her willingness to invest substantial resources in avoiding accountability for her systematic theft of Mother's life savings. The comprehensive nature of her legal response suggested advanced preparation for potential discovery of her criminal activities, indicating that her theft scheme had included contingency planning for defensive measures that could complicate prosecution efforts and delay asset recovery proceedings. Sophie's morning observations about the changed atmosphere surrounding our protective efforts demonstrated her remarkable ability to perceive adult stress and strategic complications, despite our attempts to shield her from the more concerning aspects of legal warfare. Her questions about legal procedures and her expressions of concern for Mother's welfare reflected her continued emotional investment in achieving justice, while highlighting the psychological impact that sophisticated criminal defense tactics could have on families seeking accountability for financial exploitation. The coordination call with attorney Patricia Rodriguez revealed the serious challenges that Victoria's legal counterstrike presented for maintaining protective measures while preserving evidence integrity throughout extended legal proceedings. Attorney Hawthorne's motions included demands for immediate access to all investigation materials and witness statements that could compromise ongoing evidence gathering while providing Victoria with intelligence about prosecution strategies and alliance coordination efforts. The procedural challenges created by Victoria's defense team required immediate adaptation of our legal strategy to address sophisticated arguments that questioned both the scope of our evidence and the appropriateness of emergency protective measures for someone with Mother's medical condition. The defense approach focused on undermining Mother's credibility, while suggesting that her progressive neurological condition had impaired her understanding of financial arrangements that Victoria claimed had been properly authorized through legitimate family discussions. Detective Michael Santos reported concerning developments in Victoria's behavior patterns that suggested escalating desperation and potential willingness to engage in additional criminal activities to avoid prosecution and asset forfeiture. Surveillance personnel had documented Victoria's attempts to contact offshore financial institutions and her meetings with individuals who appeared to have expertise in international asset concealment and identity modification services. The evidence of Victoria's continued criminal planning required immediate enhancement of surveillance measures, while coordinating with federal agencies that possessed jurisdiction over international money laundering and identity fraud cases. The expanded scope of Victoria's criminal activities demanded resources and expertise that exceeded local law enforcement capabilities while creating additional complications for maintaining evidence integrity and witness protection throughout complex multi-jurisdictional proceedings. Marcus contacted our coordination team with disturbing information about pressure tactics that Victoria's defense team had employed in attempting to secure his cooperation with alternative narratives that would minimize her criminal culpability while implicating Mother in financial decision-making that had supposedly authorized the systematic withdrawals from her retirement accounts. The intimidation efforts included threats of legal action for defamation and suggestions that Marcus could face criminal charges for his unwitting participation in spending stolen funds. The pressure campaign against Marcus revealed Victoria's willingness to sacrifice her former fiancé, Jess' welfare in pursuit of avoiding accountability for her crimes, while demonstrating the sophisticated coordination between her defense team and strategic advisors with expertise in criminal defense tactics. The systematic approach to witness intimidation required immediate intervention to protect Marcus from retaliation while preserving his testimony for prosecution proceedings. Sophie's interaction with Mother during our afternoon visit to Sunset Manor provided valuable insights about the emotional impact that Victoria's legal counterstrike was having on Mother's psychological well-being and her confidence in the protective measures that had been implemented on her behalf. Mother expressed concerns about family relationship destruction and her fears that pursuing criminal prosecution might result in permanent loss of contact with Victoria, despite the systematic nature of her daughter's financial exploitation. The emotional complexity of Mother's position required careful management to ensure that her desire for family reconciliation would not compromise the protective measures and prosecution efforts that were essential for preventing additional exploitation while achieving appropriate accountability for Victoria's crimes. The balance between respecting Mother's autonomy and protecting her from manipulation demanded ongoing assessment and strategic adjustment throughout the evolving legal proceedings. Investigator Linda Thompson reported that Victoria's defense team had initiated formal challenges to Adult Protective Services, authority to maintain oversight of Mother's financial affairs, while questioning the medical assessments that had supported emergency protective intervention. The procedural challenges required comprehensive medical documentation and expert testimony that would establish both Mother's vulnerability to exploitation and her capacity for understanding the protective measures being implemented on her behalf. The medical evaluation process required coordination with Mother's healthcare team while ensuring that Victoria's defense efforts would not succeed in portraying Mother as incompetent or unable to participate meaningfully in decisions about her own protection and financial security. The medical evidence would need to demonstrate the specific vulnerabilities that Victoria had exploited, while confirming Mother's capacity for understanding and approving protective measures that served her legitimate interests. Forensic accountant David Park discovered additional complications in asset tracing efforts, as Victoria's defense team had apparently initiated procedures to challenge the seizure of offshore accounts that contained substantial portions of the stolen funds. The international legal challenges required coordination with federal agencies and foreign financial authorities that possessed jurisdiction over asset recovery proceedings in multiple countries with different legal standards and procedural requirements. The offshore asset recovery complications threatened to delay restitution efforts while creating opportunities for Victoria to transfer additional funds beyond the reach of domestic legal proceedings. The time-sensitive nature of international asset preservation required immediate federal intervention while coordinating with prosecution efforts that would provide legal foundations for comprehensive asset forfeiture across multiple jurisdictions. The evening coordination meeting with the District Attorney's Elder Abuse Unit revealed both the challenges and opportunities created by Victoria's sophisticated legal defense, while confirming the continued strength of our evidence and prosecution strategy. The comprehensive documentation that our investigation had gathered exceeded typical standards for elder abuse cases while providing multiple avenues for prosecution that would be difficult for even aggressive defense tactics to completely undermine. Prosecutor Jennifer Walsh explained that Victoria's willingness to invest substantial resources in legal defense while continuing efforts to conceal assets actually strengthened the prosecution case by demonstrating consciousness of guilt and criminal intent that supported enhanced penalties under federal sentencing guidelines. The systematic nature of Victoria's defensive efforts provided additional evidence of sophisticated criminal planning, that would justify substantial prison sentences and comprehensive asset forfeiture. The adaptation of our strategic approach required enhanced coordination with federal agencies, while maintaining focus on protective measures that would prevent Victoria from causing additional harm to mother or other vulnerable family members during extended legal proceedings. The multi-layered defense strategy demanded resources and expertise that tested our alliance capabilities while providing opportunities for demonstrating the power of coordinated citizen action in pursuit of justice. Sophie's evening reflection on the day's setbacks and adaptations revealed her growing understanding of legal complexity, while maintaining confidence in our ultimate ability to achieve justice for Mother despite Victoria's sophisticated efforts to avoid accountability. Her observations about persistence and strategic thinking provided valuable perspective on how challenges could strengthen resolve and improve coordination, rather than undermining commitment to protective objectives. The strategic adaptation process required careful evaluation of our alliance capabilities, while identifying additional resources and expertise that would be necessary for overcoming Victoria's defensive tactics and achieving comprehensive accountability for her crimes. The setbacks had revealed both vulnerabilities in our approach and opportunities for enhancement that would strengthen our position throughout extended legal proceedings. Marcus's decision to maintain cooperation with prosecution efforts despite increasing pressure from Victoria's defense team demonstrated remarkable moral courage that required personal sacrifice while providing essential testimony for criminal proceedings. His continued commitment to justice reflected ethical standards that inspired sustained determination despite the mounting challenges and sophisticated opposition tactics. The victim advocacy coordination provided essential support for Mother's emotional well-being, while ensuring that her voice and preferences would be preserved throughout legal proceedings that necessarily involved public exposure of family financial abuse and systematic exploitation. The specialized resources enabled Mother to maintain dignity and autonomy while participating meaningfully in justice efforts that served her legitimate interests and protected her future security. The evening analysis of setback implications and adaptation requirements revealed that Victoria's sophisticated defense efforts had actually provided additional evidence of criminal intent, while creating opportunities for enhanced prosecution under federal statutes that carried stronger penalties and asset forfeiture provisions. The comprehensive nature of her defensive strategy demonstrated the calculated nature of her original crimes while justifying expanded investigation and prosecution efforts. The adaptation strategies developed through coordinated response to Victoria's legal counterstrike had strengthened our alliance capabilities while providing valuable experience in managing complex legal challenges that would serve prosecution efforts throughout extended proceedings. The setbacks had tested our resolve while ultimately confirming the strength of our evidence and the appropriateness of our protective objectives. The path forward required sustained commitment to justice despite mounting opposition, while maintaining focus on protective measures that would ensure Mother's continued safety and security throughout legal proceedings, that would ultimately achieve comprehensive accountability for Victoria's systematic financial exploitation and betrayal of family trust. Saturday morning brought unprecedented coordination with federal investigators as the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network initiated comprehensive analysis of Victoria's banking activities across multiple institutions and jurisdictions. Special Agent Rebecca Chen of the Treasury Department's Investigative Division had assumed primary coordination for the expanded federal case, which now encompassed not only elder abuse charges but also sophisticated money laundering operations that implicated Victoria in criminal enterprises extending far beyond the theft of Mother's retirement savings. The federal investigation revealed that Victoria's systematic exploitation of Mother represented merely one component of a broader criminal network that targeted vulnerable elderly individuals through carefully orchestrated manipulation schemes designed to extract maximum financial resources while avoiding detection by family members and regulatory authorities. The sophisticated nature of these operations indicated professional criminal organization rather than opportunistic individual fraud, creating implications that would require extensive investigation and coordinated prosecution efforts across multiple federal districts. Sophie's continued observations about Victoria's behavioral patterns had provided crucial insights that enabled federal investigators to identify additional victims and criminal associates who had participated in the broader exploitation network. Her remarkable ability to notice details that escaped adult attention had proven invaluable for connecting seemingly unrelated activities into comprehensive evidence of systematic criminal enterprise that operated across state lines and international boundaries. The morning coordination session with Special Agent Chen provided detailed briefing about the expanded scope of federal investigation while establishing protocols for maintaining evidence integrity and witness protection throughout complex multi-jurisdictional proceedings. The federal resources would enable comprehensive asset tracing and recovery efforts that exceeded local law enforcement capabilities, while providing enhanced protection for mother and other victims who had suffered systematic financial exploitation. Marcus provided additional crucial intelligence about Victoria's communication patterns and travel activities that had enabled federal investigators to identify her criminal associates and map the organizational structure of the exploitation network. His access to Victoria's personal communications through their previous relationship had revealed coordination with individuals who possessed specialized expertise in financial fraud, identity manipulation, and international asset concealment techniques. The federal investigation had identified at least 12 additional elderly victims across 6 states who had suffered systematic financial exploitation through schemes that bore striking similarities to Victoria's manipulation of mothers' trust and vulnerability. The pattern of targeting individuals with progressive medical conditions and limited family oversight demonstrated calculated predatory behavior that supported enhanced federal charges and substantial penalty enhancements under organized crime statutes. Sophie's interaction with federal investigators demonstrated her remarkable ability to provide detailed and accurate information about complex adult activities while maintaining appropriate emotional boundaries regarding the criminal behavior she had observed. Her testimony would provide crucial evidence for prosecution proceedings, while her continued observations offered ongoing intelligence about Victoria's activities and potential criminal planning during the pretrial period. The comprehensive financial analysis conducted by federal forensic accountants revealed that Victoria's criminal activities had generated proceeds exceeding $2 million through systematic exploitation of vulnerable elderly victims over an 18-month period. The scope of financial harm demanded comprehensive asset forfeiture proceedings while establishing restitution requirements that would provide meaningful compensation for all identified victims of the criminal enterprise. The international dimensions of Victoria's money laundering activities required coordination with foreign law enforcement agencies and financial regulatory authorities in 7 countries where stolen funds had been systematically transferred through sophisticated layering techniques designed to obscure the criminal origins of the assets. The complexity of international asset recovery would require sustained coordination over extended periods, while maintaining pressure on Victoria's criminal associates to prevent additional asset transfers. Detective Michael Santos reported that surveillance activities had documented Victoria's attempts to contact additional potential victims through social media platforms and professional networking sites that enabled identification of elderly individuals with substantial assets and limited family oversight. The evidence of continued criminal planning while under investigation demonstrated escalating criminal behavior that justified enhanced surveillance and immediate intervention to prevent additional victimization. The federal investigation revealed that Victoria's criminal associates included licensed professionals with access to financial planning services, legal documentation, and medical records that facilitated identification and targeting of vulnerable elderly individuals. The involvement of professional service providers added institutional dimensions to the criminal enterprise, while creating opportunities for comprehensive prosecution of enabling professionals who had facilitated systematic elder abuse. Sophie's observations about Victoria's social media activities had provided federal investigators with crucial intelligence about communication methods and coordination techniques used by the criminal network. Her natural understanding of digital communication patterns enabled identification of coded language and coordination signals that would have been difficult for adult investigators to recognize without specific guidance about behavioral patterns and communication preferences. The afternoon coordination meeting with victim advocacy specialists revealed the comprehensive support services that would be necessary for addressing the psychological trauma and financial devastation that Victoria's criminal network had inflicted on elderly victims and their families. The specialized resources would ensure that mother and other victims would receive appropriate support throughout extended legal proceedings while maintaining focus on dignity preservation and autonomy protection. The federal prosecutor's assessment of evidence quality indicated that the comprehensive documentation gathered through our initial investigation exceeded typical standards for organized crime prosecutions while providing multiple avenues for enhanced charges under federal statutes that carried substantial mandatory minimum sentences. The systematic nature of Victoria's criminal activities justified prosecution under racketeering statutes that would enable comprehensive asset forfeiture and extended prison sentences for all participants in the criminal enterprise. Marcus's continued cooperation with federal investigators provided access to financial records and communication documentation that revealed the organizational hierarchy and operational methods of Victoria's criminal network. His willingness to testify in federal proceedings despite personal costs demonstrated remarkable courage while providing essential evidence for dismantling the entire criminal organization rather than simply prosecuting individual participants. The evening briefing with Special Agent Chen confirmed that federal investigators had successfully infiltrated Victoria's criminal network through coordinated surveillance and communication monitoring that would enable real-time documentation of criminal planning and coordination activities. The ongoing investigation would provide comprehensive evidence of criminal enterprise operations while preventing additional victimization through timely intervention and arrest procedures. Sophie's bedtime conversation revealed her growing understanding of the federal investigation's significance, while expressing satisfaction that her initial observations had contributed to protecting multiple elderly victims from continued exploitation. Her perspective on justice and accountability provided valuable insights about the moral foundations that motivated sustained effort despite mounting complexity and opposition from sophisticated criminal defense efforts. The coordination with international law enforcement agencies established procedures for simultaneous asset seizure operations across multiple countries that would prevent Victoria's criminal associates from transferring additional stolen funds beyond recovery jurisdiction. The coordinated approach would maximize asset preservation while demonstrating international commitment to addressing transnational elder abuse and financial exploitation networks. The federal investigation had revealed that Victoria's criminal network operated with sophisticated understanding of legal vulnerabilities and regulatory gaps that enabled systematic exploitation of elderly individuals while avoiding detection by traditional oversight mechanisms. The comprehensive nature of their operations required enhanced federal resources and coordinated prosecution efforts that would address both individual criminal liability and organizational dismantlement. The intelligence gathered through expanded federal investigation confirmed that Victoria's systematic exploitation of mother represented a calculated test case for refining manipulation techniques that would subsequently be applied to additional victims, with greater financial resources and reduced family oversight. The evidence of deliberate progression and sophistication supported enhanced charges while demonstrating the necessity of comprehensive prosecution to prevent continued criminal operations. The federal coordination had established comprehensive victim notification procedures that would ensure all identified victims would receive appropriate support services while maintaining evidence integrity throughout extended prosecution proceedings. The systematic approach to victim assistance would provide essential resources for recovery, while ensuring meaningful participation in justice processes that would hold perpetrators accountable for systematic financial exploitation. Sophie's contributions to the federal investigation had exceeded all expectations for civilian assistance, while demonstrating remarkable emotional resilience and analytical capabilities that impressed professional investigators with extensive experience in complex criminal cases. Her continued involvement would provide ongoing intelligence, while her testimony would offer unique perspectives that could enhance prosecution effectiveness and victim advocacy efforts. The evening analysis of federal investigation developments revealed unprecedented opportunities for achieving comprehensive justice, while protecting vulnerable elderly individuals from sophisticated criminal networks that targeted their assets and independence. The systematic approach to investigation and prosecution would establish important precedents for addressing transnational elder abuse while providing meaningful accountability for systematic financial exploitation. The expanded federal investigation had transformed our initial protective efforts into comprehensive criminal justice proceedings that would address not only Victoria's theft of mother's life savings, but also the broader criminal enterprise that had systematically exploited vulnerable elderly individuals across multiple states and international jurisdictions. The scope of federal involvement provided resources and expertise that would ensure appropriate accountability while protecting additional potential victims from continued exploitation. The coordination with federal agencies had demonstrated how individual citizen action and comprehensive evidence gathering could catalyze systematic law enforcement response to sophisticated criminal enterprises that operated across traditional jurisdictional boundaries. The success of our initial investigation in triggering federal intervention provided validation for persistent advocacy and strategic coordination in pursuit of justice for vulnerable family members and community protection. The information gathering intensification had revealed the full scope of Victoria's criminal activities while providing federal investigators with unprecedented intelligence about organized elder abuse networks that required comprehensive dismantlement through coordinated prosecution and asset forfeiture proceedings. The systematic approach to evidence development would ensure that all participants in the criminal enterprise would face appropriate accountability, while victims would receive meaningful restitution and support services throughout their recovery processes. Sunday morning arrived with the weight of irrevocable commitment, as federal prosecutors prepared to implement coordinated arrests across 6 states that would dismantle Victoria's criminal network while simultaneously executing asset seizure operations in multiple international jurisdictions. The comprehensive scope of law enforcement action represented the culmination of intensive investigation efforts that had transformed our initial protective intervention into a landmark federal prosecution addressing systematic elder abuse and organized financial exploitation on an unprecedented scale. The final coordination meeting with Special Agent Rebecca Chen confirmed that all operational elements were properly positioned for simultaneous execution that would prevent criminal associates from warning each other or transferring additional assets beyond recovery jurisdiction. The strategic timing of coordinated arrests would maximize evidence preservation while minimizing opportunities for destruction of records or intimidation of witnesses who had provided crucial testimony supporting federal prosecution efforts. Sophie demonstrated remarkable composure as she processed the significance of the approaching culmination of investigation efforts that had begun with her innocent observation about Victoria's social media activities and their correlation with mother's financial losses. Her understanding of the broader implications for protecting vulnerable elderly individuals across multiple communities reflected sophisticated moral reasoning that had motivated sustained commitment to justice despite mounting personal and family costs. The psychological preparation for witnessing Victoria's arrest required careful consideration of Sophie's emotional well-being, while acknowledging her essential role in triggering the investigation and her continued importance as a witness whose testimony would provide crucial evidence for prosecution proceedings. The balance between protecting childhood innocence and recognizing Sophie's remarkable contributions demanded ongoing assessment throughout the intensifying legal proceedings. Marcus arrived at our coordination center that morning carrying final documentation that would complete the evidentiary foundation for comprehensive prosecution of all criminal network participants. His decision to maintain cooperation despite escalating pressure from Victoria's defense team and threats from her criminal associates demonstrated extraordinary moral courage that required personal sacrifice of safety and financial security in service of justice and community protection. The comprehensive evidence packages that federal prosecutors had assembled exceeded typical standards for organized crime cases, while providing multiple prosecution pathways that would ensure appropriate accountability even if individual charges faced procedural challenges or defense objections. The systematic documentation included financial records, communication intercepts, witness testimony, and forensic analysis that created overwhelming proof of systematic criminal enterprise operations targeting vulnerable elderly victims. Mother's final pre-arrest visit provided opportunities for ensuring her emotional preparation for the challenging period that would follow Victoria's detention, while confirming her continued commitment to pursuing justice despite the inevitable family relationship destruction that comprehensive prosecution would entail. The conversation required delicate balance between honest acknowledgement of upcoming difficulties and reassurance about protective measures that would ensure her continued safety and dignity throughout extended legal proceedings. The Victim Advocacy Coordination had established comprehensive support protocols that would address both immediate crisis intervention needs and long-term recovery assistance for all identified victims of Victoria's criminal network. The specialized services would ensure that elderly victims would maintain autonomy and dignity while receiving necessary emotional support and financial guidance throughout asset recovery and restitution proceedings that could extend over multiple years. Detective Michael Santos reported that final surveillance activities had documented Victoria's increasingly desperate attempts to coordinate with criminal associates for emergency asset transfers and potential flight from prosecution jurisdiction. The evidence of consciousness of guilt and criminal planning strengthened prosecution arguments while justifying enhanced charges under federal statutes that addressed conspiracy and ongoing criminal enterprise operations. The international coordination had achieved unprecedented cooperation from foreign financial authorities, who recognized the systematic nature of transnational elder abuse operations and their commitment to preventing criminals from exploiting jurisdictional boundaries to avoid accountability for sophisticated financial exploitation schemes. The coordinated approach would enable comprehensive asset recovery while establishing important precedents for international cooperation in addressing organized elder abuse networks. Sophie's final evidence review session with federal prosecutors demonstrated her remarkable ability to provide detailed and accurate testimony about complex criminal activities while maintaining appropriate emotional boundaries regarding the family relationships that had been systematically exploited for criminal purposes. Her testimony would provide essential humanizing elements for prosecution presentations while demonstrating the devastating impact that systematic elder abuse inflicted on entire family systems. The morning briefing confirmed that federal investigators had successfully documented Victoria's attempts to recruit additional victims through social media platforms and professional networking services that targeted recently widowed elderly women with substantial assets and limited family oversight. The evidence of continued criminal planning while under investigation supported enhanced charges, while demonstrating the ongoing threat that Victoria's criminal network represented to vulnerable community members. The comprehensive asset tracing had identified over $4 million in proceeds from systematic elder abuse operations that had been distributed across multiple offshore accounts and investment vehicles designed to obscure criminal origins, while generating continued returns for criminal network participants. The scope of financial harm exceeded initial estimates while supporting substantial restitution calculations that would provide meaningful compensation for all identified victims. The federal prosecution strategy included coordination with state and local authorities to ensure that all appropriate charges would be pursued through optimal jurisdictional venues, while maintaining efficiency and avoiding procedural conflicts that could compromise prosecution effectiveness. The multi-jurisdictional approach would provide comprehensive accountability while respecting prosecutorial discretion and resource allocation considerations across different legal systems. Marcus's final coordination session provided crucial intelligence about Victoria's emergency communication procedures and her attempts to establish contact with criminal associates who possessed expertise in identity modification and international fugitive assistance services. The evidence of sophisticated flight planning supported arguments for enhanced detention without bail, while demonstrating the continued threat that Victoria represented to witness safety and community protection. The afternoon brought notification that federal judges in all relevant jurisdictions had approved coordinated arrest warrants and asset seizure orders that would enable simultaneous law enforcement action across the entire criminal network. The comprehensive judicial approval reflected the exceptional quality of evidence presentation while confirming prosecutorial arguments about the systematic nature and continuing threat posed by organized elder abuse operations. Sophie's conversation with Mother during their final pre-arrest visit provided essential emotional support while confirming Mother's understanding of the protective measures that would remain in effect throughout prosecution proceedings. The intergenerational dialogue demonstrated remarkable resilience and moral clarity that had sustained their commitment to justice, despite the emotional costs of exposing systematic family betrayal and criminal exploitation. The victim notification procedures had identified additional elderly individuals who had been targeted by Victoria's criminal network, but had avoided financial loss through timely intervention or suspicious circumstances that had prevented completion of exploitation schemes. The expanded victim identification would provide additional testimony while demonstrating the systematic nature of criminal operations that justified enhanced federal prosecution efforts. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.